had achieved now rolling, like he had unlocked
Yes.
rolling in his body.
Okay. Okay.
So he like literally like barrel rolled his way into the water, and all of his friends were around filming him and kind of laughing at him and egging him on. But like, again, that's kind of just like the vulnerability that you're talking about, that's where you're going to make those gains, is like doing those things in public and laughing. Like, you can laugh at yourself. You can look silly
Totally.
and
Yeah.
laugh at yourself.
I mean, I remember getting out of the hospital, and the first thing I did when I was finally released, it was like the most janky that I have ever been in public, right? It's like your first debut in the world after your injury. I'm in all the freaking braces, arm cast, body cast, leg, like, just walking around, shuffling, doing your thing. And the first thing I wanted to do was go to the beach. And my partner's like, "You want to go to the beach? Yes, take me to the beach. We're going right now." Drives me across the island. We go to the beach. I can barely use the walker, like it's not a pretty scene by anybody's standards, like a nightmare for any PT person. And I got to go over a sand mound. I got to go down to the beach. I mean, just an absolute train wreck of a situation waiting to happen. But it was like, I don't care what I look like. What I care about is getting my body to do what I want to do. What I care about is reclaiming my independence and my sovereignty. So if people judge me in the process of that, they just don't know what's going on. And that's okay. That's for them to figure out. But for me, I'm going to wear my ego out like it's a goddamn shoe as quickly as possible, because the point is to return to independence. The point is to return to, again, sovereignty. So if you can't, if I shouldn't say if I can't move past myself in order to do the task, then that's the bigger work. It's not about the task. It's about moving past my ego. And that's been the biggest paralyzer for me. That's been the biggest paralyzer that I see in other folks. Because once they get out of their way, it's like, okay, well, what can we work on? We can work on 100% right here. And if your ego's not in the way, like, we can go full throttle on this baby. Yeah, you might be wiggling, you might be crawling, but we can go full throttle on crawling until you're the best damn crawler on the planet. And then it's just gonna bump you up to the next stage, and simply by just doing the work without the ego. So that's my spiel on that. You guys can no. Yeah.
No, Dustin, I remember the first time I listened, I don't remember what podcast you were on, but the first time I heard your story, and that stood out to me so much, listening to your story, was like, you just like did it. I think you said something along the lines of like, yeah, you just like crawled around your little cabin because it wasn't accessible or something like that. And I was just like, damn, this guy just like did what it takes. And either you did what it takes or you just did whatever choice you had at that time. Maybe it was a little bit of both, but
I don't see
I
it's
just
the
super
same coin,
respected that. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, I think
you always have the choice, right? In this injury, you always have the choice to give into the easy route. You always have the choice to choose the chair. But the opportunity is to see what else is beyond that. And in order to do that, sometimes it's scary, not because we're afraid to fall, but because we're afraid to be seen. And that's some deep shit to work on right there.
Yeah. That's totally too one of the things that would make me laugh about Theo, even, as I started to lean a bit more into kind of the work that we're talking about now, because I wasn't always in this kind of holistic lens, or more holistic lens, was Theo's vulnerability. Like, I remember him sending me a video, even again, like he was on the beach and he wanted to get into the water, and he would normally, I guess, I don't know, just not go in the water, but he had achieved now rolling, like he had unlocked rolling in his body.
Okay.
So he like literally like barrel rolled his way into the water, and all of his friends were around filming him and kind of laughing at him and egging him on. But like, again, that's kind of just like the vulnerability that you're talking about, that that's where you're going to make those gains, is like doing those things in public and laughing. Like you can laugh at yourself. You can look silly
Totally.
and
Yeah.
laugh at yourself. Like it
Yeah.
doesn't have to be like a serious thing. Yeah.
On that note though, sometimes it's hard to like I'm so good at it. I've got a lot of practice at laughing at myself, all of the stupid things that I'm like, Jesus Christ, Dustin, what did you do here? That's fine, right? And including falling out of a tree, right? Like I talk to a lot of folks and they're like, dang, I got shot or I got hit, somebody hit me with a car accident and they're feeling really down on themselves. And it's like, I can always come back to, yeah, but did you fall out of a tree that you climbed on yourself? Like if you can't laugh at yourself and have a humility about your injury, like that's also stuff that we got to work on, and working on that's going to lead you down the road. But I can remember in those early days that there was definitely times where it was hard to laugh at myself. It was hard to see myself. Hey guys, real quick, while we're on the subject, if you or someone you know has a spinal cord injury, then this book is for you. My name's Dustin Meza. Some of you know me as the Paralysis Assassin. Many of you have probably never heard of me, and that's okay. But I still wanted to connect with you today, and I wanted to share about my book that is on pre-sale now. 12 years ago, I had a spinal cord injury, and it was devastating. It was the most devastating thing I've ever gone through in my life. My body shattered, my career felt shattered, my relationships were shattered. You know what? I even lost my home. I was homeless. And so I know what it's like to be absolutely wrecked from this injury. I know what it's like to try desperately to move your body and have nothing happen. And know what it's like to not be able to go to the bathroom on your own, or even be able to feed yourself on your own. I know what it's like, you guys. I've been there. I know what it's like to want to get out of that wheelchair so damn bad that you push and push and push and absolutely nothing happens. I've been there. And that's why I wrote this book. I wrote this book because in my 12 years of research and recovery, I had the fortune to be able to meet, train, and even travel with some amazing healers, with some amazing practitioners of movement arts and of Eastern medicines. I wrote this book because I remember what it was like being in ICU and searching for answers. I remember what it was like to be so many years out and feel like, dang, what kind of direction can I take with this thing? What kind of strategy can I put together in order to make the most out of my recovery? Because of my teachers, I was able to develop strong foundation in order to recover. Because of my teachers, I was able to apply a consistent strategy that over the 12 years of my recovery have helped me to reach a level of rehabilitation so rarely seen with this injury. And that's why I wrote this book. I wrote this book because I wanted to share these insights with you. I wanted to let you know that you're not alone in this journey. And I wanted to provide you the footsteps of healing, rejuvenation, and recovery. So if you've had a spinal cord injury and you're looking for new strategies, then this book is for you. If you have a spinal cord injury and you're looking for a little inspiration, then this book is for you. And if you have a spinal cord injury and you just want to have a fun adventure and maybe just get outside of your wheelchair, if only in your mind, then this book is for you. I tried to write this book in a way that is both fun, compelling, and functional. I tried to write this book in a way that is both an adventure and a bit of a manual. So I hope you'll go to my website today. I hope you'll pick yourself up a copy of Paralysis Assassin, Healing Spinal Cord Injury with Ancient Warrior Wisdom. I hope you'll do this today, because this book might just very well provide the answers that you need to take your recovery to the next level. And I have this Hanai brother, this brother from another mother. He's like my Hawaiian twin. Joey. And one day we're at the beach, and I had to crawl all the way down to get to the water, right? And it was very humbling because there's a bunch of cuties on the beach that day, right? And it's always hard when you're in that scene, and you know that everybody is gonna watch you as soon as you pull up to the stage there. And so I'm like, frick, here goes, put my gear to the side, take off all your freaking battle armor, and get down on my knees. And now it's like, all right, I got to freaking crawl into the water. And I start doing that. And my buddy Joey, he recognized how I was kind of stalling, how I was having hesitancy. He saw that my ego was like shattering in this moment, right? And he just, before I could even get down to my knees, he just dropped down to his knees. And he just was with me while I was crawling down, and he crawled with me. And it was like a really powerful moment for me because all of a sudden I'm not doing it by myself. All of a sudden I feel like it's no big deal if people just crawl to the beach, right? Like we could just crawl. But what a strong gesture to have this person who's completely able-bodied not just see me go through my struggle, but to be like, bro, I'll crawl with you in your struggle, and it was like, bro, whatever you need, man.
That's so cool.
When our support system can actually like have a level of compassion where they can be with you and not just like, oh, I'm here to help you, sincerely be there with you, it can really be a shifting moment for the person who's injured, for the person on their healing path. And it's just, I think it's a wonderful gift to be able to give.
Yeah. I've actually, so I've started teaching courses for movement professionals now. And in those courses, we have periods of time where we have breakout sessions where, the clinicians will break out in groups of like 3 to 5 and work with, I call them SCI demo model. So I have people with spinal cord injury come in for the course and they implement the strategies and the exercises on real live bodies. Anyways, I found myself the last couple times I'm taking pictures and videos and stuff during these lab times, and my favorite photos or captures are when the clinicians are like down on the floor doing the same exercise as the demo client is doing. So like, let's say, for example, like tummy time, like propping up on their elbows. When there's like 5 clinicians all in tummy time, like amphitheater seating, like around their demo client. I just find that so cool. And there's such a power. Again, I'm taking that story that you just shared and kind of pulling it into a clinical practice. That co-regulation of both me trying to understand what my client is going through, but then also giving that client something relatable, something else in that room that is relatable to what they're going through at that moment. Kind of what you said, it's like that being with your client. Like I'm trying to like understand and also teach and have that co-regulation, that crossover.
Sorry, go ahead.
And that's okay. And even this used to be unconscious. I guess now I try to do even more consciously, but in the way that I'm supporting my clients in a position, for example, like I'll try to be in that position myself as much as possible. So if someone is in a split kneeling position, I'm kind of supporting their hips from behind, I will also try to be in a split kneeling position. If they're in a deep squat, I'll be in a deep squat holding them, or in a tall kneel position, I'll try to be like straddled or tall kneeling behind them. I think there's a beautiful power in like mirroring. We know that mirroring is helpful just in general, but I think in a like an energetic sense too of relating, having that same posturing.
Yeah, and from the perspective of the person with psi, like if you were my teacher, being able to see how it's supposed to be done is really important. Yeah, the mirroring part. But there is this going back to it, this quality of like, hey, my teacher's willing to be in the trenches with me. They're willing, you know what I mean? Because that's kind of how it feels. Like as a dude with psi, as a person with psi, like it freaking feels like you're in the trenches and nobody gets it. So like to be a person trying to figure out how to wiggle around on the ground, how to get into crawling, and your teacher's not just like hovering over you, like,
Yeah.
but to feel like, wow, they're willing to get down on my level. They're willing to be with me, in the trenches, to feel what I'm kind of feeling and explore that with me. It feels more wholesome. I always got so much more out of my training when my teacher would do it with me, as opposed to him being like, okay, I'm going to do it, and then you can do it. Okay, you repeat that for 100 goes versus
Yeah.
like just 5 goes where we're doing it together. Like, it buries it into my body deeper. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That memory.
Yeah. I'm curious to hear from, because you mentioned when you're teaching the same class for 5 hours in a row, like how,
Oh,
because I
different
run,
classes, but I would
okay.
teach. So it would be like a movement class followed by a standing class followed by an academic class.
Okay, well, still, so let's just say you're even like 3 hours, let's say, where you're moving constantly for 3 hours to have that kind of, like we said, that mirroring effect for your students. I found for myself, I can only do that so much. Whereas,
Mhm.
like, so my clients will be like, "Oh, it's so much better when you do it with me," and I'm like, "I'm tired," but I'm
Yeah,
like, "Okay, I'll do it with you." Yeah, and yeah, I like that you bring that up, and I appreciate you actually giving me that reminder from your perspective and how helpful that is, because it is important that we put some energy into doing that. I now work 99% of my sessions are remote on the
Mm.
computer. So just because of my technology, like the technology, I guess, is like I need to be at the screen to like see all the little things that I want to be able to see.
Totally. Yep.
And if I'm back zoomed out in frame participating in the movement and I'm moving myself and I'm not even looking at the screen, there's a loss that can happen with me actually coaching versus it just being a follow the leader session.
Totally.
So as we've discussed, there's a trade-off in everything here, and there's got to be a little bit of both. But I invested in getting some bigger monitors so that
Nice.
I could be back a little bit. But that, I mean, that's not an automatic thing that in my brain that wasn't like an obvious thing for me. It took me a couple months to realize like, oh, maybe I should just get like a bigger monitor so I can like see my but like I in all of my early coaching videos, because I record everything, I'm like this and the camera, like my face is huge, and now I can like kind of sit
Now I gotta
back.
sit back. Now you're making me so.
No, like I'm like literally like this close in the screen most of the time in my old videos. It's hilarious.
Yeah, it is. It's a difficult thing. I mean, the academic classes, I'm sitting and we're just jiving like this, right?
Yeah.
But for the standing, I might be standing with them and trying to like, okay, in this position, how can I help them? How can I articulate my body and articulate my language in such a way that they can get a sense or drop into that same field? And so it's a trade-off. Some days I'm gonna hold it and have them try to see what I'm doing so they can embody that, impersonate that. And then other days I might be right here. Okay, now a little bit more like this. And then there might be other days where I just feel like, flapjacks, where I'm just getting tossed up and down. I'm up here and then I'm sitting back down. I'm
Yeah.
looking. So it all
Yeah.
depends kind of on what we're learning for the day, whether they've learned it before and I can really focus on the fine tuning, or if I have to present and be a demonstrator so that everybody can kind of figure out the gross movement of it.
Yeah. And gosh, I just love having this conversation with you because there's not a lot of clinicians doing this work remotely. Like at this
Mhm.
point, the norm is still hands-on. And so the challenges, the pros, but then also the cons of teaching remotely. Like it's so nice to be able to talk to someone who gets it. And I love the fact that you are both a clinician, a teacher, and then also you've had this lived experience. I just love that you
Mm.
can use your lived experience as a way to teach. I think that's so beautiful. And I think I've only heard of one or two other people who are really kind of gone full circle in their journey. anyways, I just think it's beautiful. I just wanted to say
Thank
that.
you. I appreciate that. Yeah, that was one of the conversations my teacher had with me early on. Maybe after a year of 2 years of training with him, he said at some point you need to think about your practice going beyond you. Now, at that point, I had already taught at the collegiate level. I've already started massage school and been a licensed therapist for a while. So I was already looking at that kind of like in a one-on-one setting. But his I guess suggestion to me, or maybe his direction to me, was that I think in a bigger way, like how can I serve more people? And what's interesting about when you start asking yourself that question after you've had your injury, because I don't know about your clients, but what I see from and when I talk with a lot of folks with spinal cord injury, there's a lot of eye focus. What's in it for me? What can I do? What can you give me? How can I get more? How can I do this thing? And it's very rarely about like, hey, how can I take care of my family better? Hey, how can I support my family, even supporting me? How can I give back to my community, even if it's just the side community? There's very little conversation about that, or even thinking about that. So when he asked that question, it made me start thinking about how I can use my healing process to learn deeper, so that, because you always learn more as a teacher, right? Because you're trying to share. So with the perspective of that in mind, like, hey, someday I might want to provide some feedback for somebody else. It really made me have a deeper level of introspection and a deeper level of ownership in that healing process, so that at some point down the way, maybe I can articulate to somebody who's having challenges, who maybe knocks on my doorstep the way I knocked on my teacher's doorstep.
Yeah, that's such an interesting point that I think in a lot of ways a rightful selfishness, right? Like a rightful selfishness to some extent, right?
I had a lot of that myself, right? You
Yeah,
have to take.
Yeah, and I'm curious, just this whole idea, like you're literally in survival mode.
Yep.
So
For a while.
you have to be selfish. Yeah. And then what for you kind of was it then your teacher saying this to you? Like what for you brought you out of that spiral, or brought you kind of like zapped you out of that trance to say, okay, I'm not necessarily in survival mode. I'm actually doing pretty good. What can I do to service my greater community?
Yeah, that's a good question. What was that tipping point or that pivot point? Let me sit with that for a second. That's a good question. I think a lot of it comes from two sides of this fork here. One was that I had spent enough. So the survival mechanism, the feeling that you really have to be selfish with yourself. Like, yes, I don't want to discount that. You have to have that. I think it's essential. However, when you change your perspective to just like from the survival mode, and if you can pull back just a little bit, and you recognize that the survival mode comes from a sense of lacking, then you can start looking at how can I fill myself up. Maybe that superficially is just physically, right? I'm just going to fill myself up physically. Cool. Maybe then it's like, okay, can I fill my cup up biochemically? So you start looking at your nutrition and your internal chemistry, and you're like, okay, maybe I can fill myself up mentally and emotionally. And so the more that you can have your cup and your reserves fill back up, eventually your cup feels full enough that it spills over, and that's what you want to get to. So how quickly can you take ownership? Can you fill yourself up? And you might find that there's little pukas in your cup, and that's okay, because that means that a little bit can go out to some members in your community, or return it back to your loved ones. And maybe instead of them giving you massages every damn night, maybe you massage their feet for once. Maybe you run the Theragun on their back for once. Maybe you turn the bath on for them for once, right? Little tiny things from your cup having a little bit of flow with it. And I think the more that you can fill your own cup up, the greater the spillage it can be, the greater you can reach. So I think it comes from the inner sense of feeling like I finally took a hold of filling my own cup up.
Do you feel at all that in your case or in any instance that there's such a thing as having even, I guess in this analogy, it would be a smaller cup. So you don't need quite as much to be able to overfill, or let's say your capacity for stress has increased, right?
Mm.
So does that make sense what I'm trying to say? Like, what if your capacity for stress or taking on recovery, what if that capacity expands so that you can not only be in survival mode or serve yourself, but then also give more to others or give to the community? And I guess what I'm trying to get at is it's not so much about always I think I'm kind of going in a circle here, so just bear with me.
No, we're good. We're good.
This idea that it's not just about it's about adding things to fill your cup and taking away things to fill your
Totally.
cup and or expanding your capacity.
100%. I don't think that it's a linear thing. You know, in some cases, and this is kind of what I share with folks when we're developing a strategy for them to recover. It's not always about just adding more things to your list of to-dos. Sometimes it's taking a lot of it away, because if you're stressed out about doing all these things, or basically the idea is we got to lower your cortisol, we got to lower your stress. Right? Like
Yeah.
whatever that
Yeah.
means. Maybe for some folks, it's burning it out and we're going to go wheel around the track a couple times. Maybe for others, it's getting on the floor and doing a bunch of crawling. Maybe for others, it's having a nice bath or laying in the sunshine for a little bit,
Yeah.
right? Like put on some binaural beats, listen to a voice of value. There's so many ways that you can fill your cup up. I don't want it to seem like it's a linear thing and it's just like we train like animals all the freaking time. No, that's a
Yeah.
recipe for disaster. No,
Yeah.
but whatever your inclinations are that make you happy, maybe it's spending time with your family, going to a park, throwing the ball to your dog. I don't freaking know, but something that is going to make you feel more whole inside,
Yeah.
whatever that looks like. Yeah.
Yeah. I think people get caught up with the ideal that recovering after this kind of injury looks a certain way, like,
Mhm.
for example, increased abilities like walking, right? But I think society, or at least I hope, maybe I have a very isolated view of society, but I would hope that it's not just about those movement abilities. It's, as you said, it's like finding happiness and joy in other aspects of your life. And that's what I mean, like when I said earlier, when I said this, my form of training, my approach isn't for everyone, or at least it's not for a lot of people during certain seasons of their recovery. It's like after they've come to this conclusion that life is more than just walking,
Mhm.
then this work seems to be a bit more worthwhile. And I wish people would, or I would hope, and maybe we can reach, again, through these conversations in your podcast, I hope we can open up this idea of what recovery looks like, both for individuals themselves, but then also society, right? Like society can look at this and be like, oh my gosh, this person's super happy. Like they're stoked on life. They must be doing great in their program or whatever. Like it's not just about the movements. It's also about all these other intangible things: confidence, self-love,
Mhm. Yeah.
acceptance, joy, happiness. Yeah.
Feeling
I've
of
been working
progress,
feeling
feeling of having a sense of control for your reality. Like I was talking with Sharon. You wanna jump in on
Yeah,
that
no,
one?
I just
Okay.
think like the sense of control, I think is 100, like that one is the biggest thing. And once I started doing remote sessions, which I was like, oh, remote sessions, like how good could this actually be? But the remote sessions really instilled so much control back in people's lives, because on like so many levels, like they didn't have to coordinate a driver to get to their therapy. Like I just zoom into their home.
Yeah.
We focused on movements that they were able to do straight up themselves, right?
Yeah,
like
without
without all the
assistant.
apparatuses,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
So like, again, I think one of the questions you asked me kind of off screen was like, how is my approach different, or how is this different, and what do I focus on? What I focus on is instilling this idea of, hey, what we're looking for is self-generated and self-supported movement that you are able to control, for the most part yourselves. And when my clients started working on the other side of the screen, where I literally couldn't touch them, and proving to themselves that they did have control over their movements, that was so huge for what you would say like their progress, right? Like, what is a measure of progress? It's like, oh, their ability to do these things with self-control, like on their own. Theo and I, we've sort of like coined the hashtag, or coined the term moving more on my own, MOMO. It hasn't caught on yet, but we're gonna get there.
All right, guys, Momo.
Yeah, hashtag Momo.
Target.
Yeah. But yeah, moving more on my own. And that's like the whole effort for our program, is to help people get both movement control, but then also life control.
Yeah.
Back, control their life, and taking ownership, right? Is what
Yeah.
we're talking. Yeah.
I like Momo.
Sorry, go ahead.
I like Momo. I tend to just use sovereignty, because I think that, at least for me, I don't want to speak to anybody else's perspective, but for me, when I was going through my recovery, there was a lot of things I felt like I couldn't control, and there was a lot of things that I felt like, like, man, if I can just gain a little bit of semblance in this one thing, it would mean that I could have one foot on the ground, so to speak. Maybe I'm still working on where to put my other foot, but if I could just have one anchor point, so to maintain some sort of sovereignty over one thing. And if I can't do it externally, can I do it internally? Can I take control over my thoughts? Can I take control over my belief systems and my faith and what I want to focus on? And from that little thing, gradually that starts to articulate itself or express itself through your movements. And then we end up with Momo.
Yeah, definitely waterfalls in all facets of life. Like one of my clients, I said, this was, again, outside of the scope of movement, but I kind of said, what is something in your day-to-day routine that you wish you could just do on your own? Like, and she's like, oh, I'd love to be able to get myself a cup of tea, like in the middle of the day, without having to ask my husband. And I said, great, what do we need to make that happen? And literally half of the session was brainstorming, like, and making a shopping list. It was like, let's go on Amazon, let's see what we need to get here to make you a little tea station that's at your height, and all of the things and the tools that you need, the assisted devices and technologies that you need to be able to grab a cup of coffee. And like that, again, had nothing to do with really my scope and my program in terms of movement, but had everything to do with my scope of program, and be like, hey, I'm here to cheer you on and help you find ways to be more in control of your life. And if that means more in control of getting your cup of tea, let's do it.
1,000%. And to this idea, when you're looking at, or when side recovery folks are looking to take back ownership of their life, looking for more independence, one of the things that I try to share with them is like, just stop thinking that it's all about being in the gym or on the mat doing that stuff. Let's take ownership of your environment. So like, if people are like, I want you to put together a month-long program, great. Every Sunday, I want you to take ownership of your therapy room. I want you to wipe down all the things. I want you to arrange everything so that through the week, you're already set up for success. Because half the time with this freaking injury is you're like, how can I move from point A to point B to get task, one done? So if you can kind of pre-game all of that. Like, okay, I know I want to get tea. Okay, great. Can we put the tea station somewhere that's accessible for you? Can we build out a station for you? So the more that you could kind of like, you know, I guess bring out the feng shui for your recovery, the better the easier transition it's going to be. And essentially we're trying to remove friction, right? Like you got to get the things that are holding you up out of the way. And the more that you can do that for your space, your environment, your internal world, like the easier, smoother transitions you're going to have inside and out.